Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Would you really want to eat a sandwich made by a person you just berated and insulted? People like this do not understand cause and effect. They have only the briefest acquaintance with logic. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Lady demands a sandwich. This didn't happen to me, but I was there to witness it. I'm not a social person, and I've always been a night owl, so it's not unusual for me to go grocery shopping at midnight, though not often to overpriced stores. This was one of those exceptions. Anyway, I went to my nearest 7-Eleven, saw nobody in the store, figured the employee was doing something in the back, casually browsed their selections for what I needed. It was about this time that another character entered the store, let's call her Karen, since I don't think she said her name, who simply rushed to the counter and impatiently waited. Not that I cared, thinking she was just trying to get some gas and leave. Boy, was I wrong. It only took a minute, if that, to start shouting for an employee to serve her, and reluctantly, he did eventually come out of the back to face her, where he barely had the chance to greet her before she started saying how useless he was, and how she had to come all the way over here, and how she better be compensated. Having finally finished her rant, he actually got the chance to ask her what she needed help with. And here's where she went full crazy. She demanded that he gets off his lazy butt and opens the Subway next door to make her a sandwich, even going as far as to demand it for free because she had to track him down. It was clear that neither of us knew what she was talking about. He clearly didn't work for Subway and tried to tell her such, but she just couldn't believe it, going on and on about how it's unacceptable, how she just wanted a sandwich, how he's being racist against her, and finally the coup de grace, she demanded to speak to his manager. In response, he rather calmly said that he's the only employee in the store, a fact that she refused to believe, eventually demanding his manager's phone number, and when he refused that, she said that if he doesn't, she's going to call corporate and get them all fired. He said good, which seemed to shock her a bit, but she still huffed, pulled out her phone, and stormed out of the store. And by the time I left, she was still screaming into her phone in front of the Subway. And our second story. Want me to unload my own trailer? Okay, I needed a vacation anyway. So I was a trucker for a while, and that comes with plenty of stories of crazy things in so many places. The setup. I tend to be a bit on the lazy side when I can get away with it, and I searched for quite some time to find a company that would keep me far away from unloading the trailers myself. I found a good one that had a 95% drop and hook rate, drop off a trailer full of goods, then grab a new one that's either loaded or to take to the next pickup. 4.9% of them are either handled by the receiving dock or by lumpers, dock workers hired by warehouse companies specifically to unload trucks. That 0.1% is a list of places that just want to watch you work or be convinced that you really shouldn't operate their lifts. In my contract, I saw that there was a place where your hourly rate for unloading was stated. Not for the hours that you were sitting and waiting to be unloaded, but for when you were the one unloading your own trailer. I also saw that the contract allowed for alterations to be made to the price of this service to be charged to the customer. As a joke, I put in not one, but two extra zeros, $1,500 an hour for unloading a trailer? Should deter most people. Most people saw that, got a good laugh, then pulled in someone to unload for me. The event. Most people, like I said, were smart. This run was said to arrive at 0300 to a certain clothing store in the mall. Let's call him IB Nickeled. I'd been to the store a few times before, and it was always the same manager, Mr. Dime, receiving me, and it was always the same runaround. If I wanted to get unloaded, I had to wait for someone to get there. Then I'd have to sit and wait while the poor kid back there got the load off. Then I'd have to wait for traffic to ease up to get out, since it was always almost 10:30 by the time I finally left, leaving me with only a couple of hours left on my clock to get to a truck stop for the day. I got there, and yep, Mr. Dime had come in to accept the load. It was always hard to be smart at 0300, and I can only imagine that was part of Mr. Dime's usual runaround. This time was a bit different for a few reasons. One, he smelled like there was a bit of an herbal calming remedy about him to settle his nerves for the night. Two, he said that he was completely understaffed and there was no one around to unload me, so I'd have to do it myself. 3. I couldn't stay to my usual time because he had to leave before 0500. To be fair to him, I did try to say, sure, but my contract says, I don't give a damn what your contract states. I don't have anyone in until the store opens, and I've got an appointment that's more important than some trucker's contract. Just unload it yourself. I considered it for a moment and went back up to my truck to get my tablet. This was in 2019 before the virus, and the company had just swapped over to tablets for certain things like signing off on expenses or getting permissions. Mr. Dime was fuming when I came back and handed him the tablet. Just read through and sign with your finger. He didn't read through. I had 20 pallets at 1,500 pounds each. The only available tool to unload was a manual pallet jack. I started my work clock and began unloading at 0350. I started my work clock and began unloading at 3:15. At 5, Mr. Dime looks on in satisfaction to see me about 3/4 of the way through as he's out the door. At 5:15, Mr. Dime's replacement, Mr. Quarter of the day shift, comes running in with his face white as a sheet to see me taking off the 4th to last pallet. Please tell me that I'm reading this wrong, he pled fruitlessly. I wish I could, I lied, knowing that Mr. Dime was about to be up a muddy creek with a spoon. I even tried telling Mr. Dime what he was getting into, but he just skimmed and signed. He slumped. Wait here, I need to call my district manager. Better be quick, I want to be out of this lot by 6:30 to beat the morning rush and get a good breakfast. He ran back and I continued unloading. When I finally got the last pallet off at 5:50, I turned off my time clock as the district manager came in. We'll call him Mr. Dollar, just to keep consistent, followed both by Mr. Quarter, who was looking somewhat relieved, and by Mr. Dime, who was somewhere between terrified and furious. You're Mr. OP? Mr. Dollar asked, holding a printout and looking to it for the name. That's me, I agreed. I take it they sent over the contract Mr. Dime signed? Yes, and that's just it. Mr. Dime is accusing you of forging his signature on this, since there's no way he'd sign off on a multi-$1,000 contract just to unload a trailer, especially since he claims you insisted on unloading it yourself. I whistled. Whew, that's a heck of an accusation. Hey, is that CCTV I see up in that corner over there? I asked, knowing full well that the entire loading dock was covered by a slew of cameras. The one I pointed at was positioned just right to catch the whole conversation at the door. Mr. Quarter, get the footage, Mr. Dollar said. We don't have audio, but we do have visual on them. Mr. Dime lost his fury and now just looked petrified. The fallout. One review later, and I was grinning like a loon back to my truck. I called my manager, booked some home time, and walked away with enough money to last to the end of the month. The next time I went into that IB nickel, there was a new, much more sensible manager who always had a man on staff to unload the trucks. Edits to clarify a few things. 1, yes, I milked it a bit, though not as much as some people might think. Like I said, I was regularly there from 3 o'clock until 10:30 at the latest. Throw on top of that the fact that I've never been the healthiest of individuals, and it took me that long to keep from hurting myself. This was during the summer in SoCal, and even at night, it was still 90 degrees Fahrenheit outside, hotter in the trailer without any air conditioning. A fat man with no AC is going to take all the time he wants. 2, why didn't Mr. Dime do any of this himself, and why did he lie? Truckers tend to get the short end of the stick, even when we're regulars to a place. This was the 5th or 6th time I've been there, spread out over the course of 4 months or so I was familiar enough that I was recognized at the dock, but not so much that they really cared to keep track of it. The manager figured he could probably get away with shafting me since he claimed I didn't like how long I was waiting. I feel like he's made other truckers get to that point, but none of them had hourly rates like mine on their contract. He's just one of many that thought he could get away with blaming it on that damn trucker when it went wrong for him. And our last story. Killed my HOA. I don't know what it is about these HOAs, but I hate them with a passion. When I was growing up, any neighbor who dared get up in another neighbor's business was treated like crap for eternity. I can still remember pelting Mr. Jordan's car with snowballs with the other neighbor kids because he was such a busybody jerk. We never got in trouble either because, well, our parents despised him too. These days, that craphead would not pass go and be anointed HOA president for life. Anyway, I've been plotting to destroy the HOA for quite some time, but began to lose hope that it was here forever. And like the French felt about the Nazis who set up camp in their country, just would have to settle for some minor malicious undermining of the a-holes. Until a week ago, a major court decision was reached in Berger versus Wincliffe, where the HOA was killed off after 30 years because the original documents failed to provide an extension provision. Of course, the HOA just amended the documents with this provision, but the court, which I suspect might be hating these things as much as I do these days, said, F you can't do that. Wow, I went into my basement, where I keep these ridiculous HOA papers, and started reading. My documents were 32 years old and no extension provision either. But knowing the depths of denial these Karen and Kens are capable of, I looked up the lawyers who won that case and retained them. These guys are the top land use lawyers in the state, hired by cities and towns to write zoning laws, appointed by the governor to do housing task forces, the real deal kind of lawyers you want for this crap. He wrote the legal memorandum and opinion letter, which I sent to every homeowner, a monumental victory for the value of my home and a very satisfying petty victory for me personally. Update. Ask my lawyers if I'm entitled to repayment of any fees or fines collected after the date the HOA expired, especially fines. If the HOA leadership continued to collect funds knowing that the HOA was no longer legally in effect, they may be guilty of fraud. In that case, they might be on the hook for repayment out of their own funds. Also, any money retained by the now defunct HOA should be distributed to the former members. This would be a good time for an audit, too, at the HOA's expense, just to make sure no one was diverting funds to themselves, like having the landscapers who do the common areas do the president's property too and just billing it all to the HOA. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.